Welcome to the Rachel Varga podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Varga, double board certified aesthetic nurse specialist since 2011 with over 20,000 rejuvenation procedures performed. I'm an international clinical trainer for other physicians and nurses as well, celebrity skin expert, having been featured on some of the world's top proactive aging podcasts, and much, much more. Learn more at rachelvarga.ca and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rachel Varga podcast. I am your host, simply a human on a mission to help you become your most vibrant and radiant version for not just now, but for many more years to come, using various body, mind, spirit, and energy practices, and of course, non-toxic beauty and how we can care for ourselves from the inside out to get the best skin of our life. So welcome, welcome, welcome. In today's episode, we are exploring radiance. Renegade beauty. As y'all know, I love to live a little bit dangerously by 4x4, about once or twice a week, 3 hours into the bush, no cell reception. I see bears, I see cougars, all that fun stuff. So living a little bit dangerously and renegade beauty, I'm very excited for our conversation. And we're also going to be talking about key insights you need to know about the beauty industry. And you've heard me say this in previous episodes here on the show. By the way, make sure that you are subscribed to the Rachel Varga podcast on your favorite podcast platforms. It's actually where I do a lot of my solo episodes. And then here on YouTube is where I live stream my interviews. So make sure you subscribe both on YouTube and on your favorite podcasting platforms. And if you have any questions from today's episode, please send me a direct email, info@rachelvarga.ca. And you can find all my past episodes at rachelvarga.ca/blog. You can actually easily search topics like acne, rosacea, hyperpigmentation, peptides, and other exciting things. So speaking of exciting, I am beyond thrilled for our guest here today. We have Nadine Artemis joining us. She's a fellow Canadian, more on the East Coast. We definitely were chatting before this of looking forward to connecting actually in the flesh a little bit later this year. I think that's going to be in the cards for us, which is exciting. So let me tell you a little bit about Nadine Artemis. She's the founder of Living Libations, and she's the author of 2 books, including Renegade Beauty and Holistic Dental Care. I love this concept of clean skin care and also clean oral care. This is really important. She's the creator of Living Libations, a luxury line of organic, wildcrafted, non-GMO serums, elixirs, and essential oils for those seeking the purest of the pure botanical, natural health, wellness, and beauty products on the planet. She is a beauty philosopher, aromacologist, and botanical muse. Nadine lives in simplicity and a natural, rhythmic, natural approach. This is why we get along so wonderfully. She is a disruptor in the mainstream idea of wellness, beauty, and beauty products. Yes, 2 peas in a pod right here in this episode. A frequent commentator on health and beauty for media outlets, and her products have received rave reviews in the New York Times, Goop, New York Magazine, Vogue, InStyle, The Hollywood Reporter, and much, much more. Described by Alanis Morissette as a true sense visionary, a beta founder, and the host Rachel Backer calls Nadine a pure flower of creativity. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Nadine Artemis here on the show. How are you today?
Hi, I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm thrilled to connect with you because you and I are both on a mission to provide our clients and listeners and basically as many people as we can access to clean products and also this way of living. I love how you also live in nature. You live simply. I also like to live simply too, right? And not kind of overclutter this world. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your history, what got you excited in caring for yourself from the inside out, and what got you into the world of trying to live as a renegade beauty. I love this concept. What does it mean to you?
To me, renegade beauty is just really about, finding that inner radiance and, letting that shine in the world. And I feel like, beauty is such a convoluted thing in many ways. But I think true beauty is about finding that inner radiance and letting that shine out. And Renegade Beauty, sort of the main thesis of that book is like, how are we going to find and reveal our inner radiance? And for me, I really feel like the foundation of it is to engage with the elements, where it's really, it's not another supplement or necessarily a bottle of cream that's really going to, anchor in that revolutionary beauty. It's really about engaging with the elements, with water, earth, wind, and fire, so to speak, where we got fresh water, we're drinking good water, bathing, showering, or the gifts from the earth, using things that are natural botanicals, getting our feet on the earth, or getting outside, getting that fresh air. And the sun, the sun is definitely something that seems opposite of beauty, because we think it's this harbinger of wrinkles, but it's not. And it's very essential for our health and well-being, and our skin health and well-being, and our radiance.
I love that. Literally, we are two peas in a pod. Everything you just said, I will echo. I will also add a little bit of extra tidbit of insight here. So yes, we have the 4 elements, but there's also the 5th element, which was actually discovered not too long ago, and that's the space in between. That's the dark matter, which legitimately makes up most of our universe. We're talking like 70 to 80%. The actual percentage, I don't think they've been able to pinpoint quite yet, but there's this like essence, and there's this, 5th element that, there's a really fun Bruce Willis movie on that. It was one of my favorite movies growing up, and we're just unpacking this. So I think being a renegade beauty is getting in nature, being barefoot, doing your cold plunges. You have a naturally a spring-filled lake on your property. I have a trough that's in the backyard that I'll get into, or I'll get into waterfalls in nature. But yeah, being a bit of a renegade beauty, getting that sunshine is going to be contrary to what most dermatologists will tell you to do, especially with our skin type, which we will get into the weeds on what we actually think about skin typing, which might surprise you all. So when you're on a lot of interviews, you're talking to a lot of people, and in your experience, what have you found makes someone radiant, and what do you do in your personal life to be radiant?
Well, I do feel like, luckily I have been making my own skincare like for almost like 30 years. So I feel like really lucky in that I've been able to, I really just kind of had to undo my teens and the toxins that I was putting on there for my skin. So I was blessed to know this early on. But obviously, eating well, hydrating, and all that good stuff. But I really feel like one of the keys for me is engaging with the sun. I feel like once I really understood that more and deeper, and how to engage wisely, I feel like a lot just sort of came into balance with my circadian rhythms, vitamin D levels, which I think are just so essential to have sufficient for so many reasons. So I feel like that's really, really what helps, is again, that engagement that brought things forward. And so that helps me live in tune with nature a bit more. And, obviously I wasn't always living in nature. So I found that even when I was in the city, and that was about 16 years ago, it was like even more like finding that where's the moon, where's the sun, where's that like patch of grass that I can just be on for a moment. And so I'm happy that I brought more nature into my life, because I just feel like, as the world around is very interesting, I feel like I can always just ground into the rhythm here and the life here, and looking out at nature, which to me is always reflecting back, obviously a whole nuanced world, but there's a simplicity there that just is like, I feel like, the foundation.
When we're talking about radiance and renegade beauty, I actually feel my most beautiful and radiant version, just personally, when I'm kind of covered in mud.
Yes, that's a good point.
When I've been hiking the Juan de Fuca Trail, and like I'm like my shoes, my Timberlands are covered in mud. I got mud all over my pants. My hands are all dirty from playing with rocks and trees and climbing. And getting a little bit dirty is really good for the skin and our microbiome. It develops resiliency, and it actually helps to support our innate immune health, which is pretty cool. So do you find that too? Getting a little bit dirty is actually what will make you more pure?
Yes, oh, totally. And I think, that's like even a simple clay mask on one level, it kind of gets you in contact with that. Yeah, I love getting dirty and like jumping in the lake. And yeah, I feel like I feel the most beautiful when I'm, watching a sunrise or jumping in and out of that lake and engaging with the sun. I feel like that sort of, and then the sparkles are dancing on the lake, and that's sort of like a peak beauty moment for me in my existence and in my sort of self-care.
Yeah, I think it's becoming harder, more difficult for individuals who are living in smart cities to get their feet on the earth, to engage with nature, to get that electromagnetic grounding, which then sets the stage for every other biochemical process in your body, your nervous system, your body, mind, spirit, and energy practices. So, what are your favorite body practices? Like, let's just break this down like
Yeah.
body, mind, spirit, energy. What are some of your cultivated practices? Because I look at you and clearly you're doing some things right. We're on a similar wavelength here. So, I want to learn from you. What are you doing to care for your body exercise wise?
Yeah, exercise wise, as sort of depends on the season for me. And that's one thing, I'm not so good at winter in the sense because I feel like my peak seasons are like spring, summer, fall. So I feel like that's when I feel a little more cut off from the earth. There's snow all around, so I always, that moment's hard for me, but I also, then I kind of rely on some more things indoors lately. So, generally I'm walking, I'm swimming, in the summer and walking all year round. And I also really love, which I'm really honored to have, a PEMF machine, which is like kind of does the cellular exercise for you in the sense that it's working out your cells, but you also don't have to have any, lactic acid buildup or any of that oxidative stress. So I do love the PMF as sort of an over lighting thing. And I feel it also gets like every muscle in the body where, if you're doing, any other form of exercise, you're not necessarily tuning into every single muscle. So I love that. And then otherwise I do keep my exercise pretty simple.
I've actually done a ton of biohacking. Dave Asprey is a friend of mine, and I'm very privileged to have Upgrade Labs here in my
That's
own
so fun.
backyard. And it's funny you talk about PEMF because when I do PEMF, I actually get a pretty bad headache. But
Oh,
that could be related to a couple of car accidents, and I've had to kind of
um,
rewire my nervous system. Like, I don't just get into cold water for like ish and giggles. I actually do it to reset my brain and deal with pain. And I haven't been
that's
doing as
beautiful.
much cold therapy. I've been kind of getting into more heat with saunaing and a little bit more of
Mm,
like that yin feminine sort of sides of biohacking. But I was
I
actually
love that.
just, yeah, I think it's interesting to like
There's
listen to your
also like
body.
maybe you can also use the PMF really low.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because that might help. And also, there's a really neat piece of equipment that you could find in Vancouver in the city, and that's the CVAC.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's,
I was actually just going to
yeah.
talk about that.
Oh,
I was in
you were
that
there.
Monday,
Oh, so
and
cool.
I was doing
Does
a
Dave
ton of the
have one on
CVAC.
Vancouver Island too?
Mhm.
Oh, well, then great. You've got one there. So that's really supposed to help heal brain injuries.
Oh, I noticed a huge difference. It actually got me to get my HRV up. So we're nerding
Okay.
out on biohacking here. My HRV, heart rate variability, it's a measure of basically your recovery and your heart health. My HRV went from like 40 to 140. And I was doing the
Wow.
CVAC quite regularly. And then I kind of stopped after a couple of months. Life just happened,
Yeah.
and I was kind of prioritizing my off-grid days over, the upgrade biohacking days. And it's like the steady decline with my HRV, and then
Mm.
hop in the cell trainer the other day, and like, yeah, my HRV just shot right up. So it actually takes you up and down to elevation and shrinks and expands your cells in an effort to stimulate more stem cells, which is pretty crazy. So love that
Yeah.
you mentioned biohacking. And then weights, cardio, strength,
Oh
and
yeah, and I
flexibility,
do.
so
And now
key.
you've reminded me. See, because the winter, I just it seems to things fade away. But yeah, and then one fun thing that I've been learning in the past couple years. I mean, sometimes we do Pilates on the reformer, But since then, I've actually been training and learning about gyrotonics. I don't know if you've heard about that, but it seems
What the
like an
heck is
evolution.
gyrotonics? Come
Well,
on.
it was kind of like a similar, there's like Joseph Pilates, which is just the person that invented Pilates. And then the gyrotonics, I can't remember the name of the person. They're still alive. But again, it was just really one of those genius people that really are into the movement of the body. And yeah, it works on like where you're rotating muscles. It's sort of hard to explain. And then everything you're doing is there's a weight at the end of it, but you're using like, you know what it's like? It's like if Rumi made a Pilates machine. It's like so much more, like it's like a dance. There's like way more poetry with it. And then the counter weights are just so cool rather than working on a spring system. And then you can increase the weight. So we have like one of those basic sort of gyrotonic machines. Are made out of wood, and there's like on a pulley system, and it's beautiful. And I really love that.
That sounds like a lot of fun. What about like grounding, like qigong, yoga? Are you doing any of those things?
No, I mean, I definitely had, I had a decade where I was doing yoga for sure. But then, I had a child. It takes about a decade, I think. Well, it did me. I mean, I had a lot going on, but I felt like it really took a decade before I could get back into doing something more regular with exercise. That
It's
first
interesting.
10 years.
Of kids, yeah. I'm not quite there yet, but I'll be ringing you up. It's like, well, what are your tips for staying beautiful while we have little ones and keeping up with our businesses and
Yeah,
all of
it's a
these things that we
lot.
have going on?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have some
I say
great
though, the
ideas.
way that you've sort of grounded into your lifestyle now and like all the things that you're doing, I feel like you have such a great foundation, and obviously your child will partake in a lot of that as well until they're a teenager, and then they won't want to do any of that.
Yeah, pretty confident hubby and I are going to end up homeschooling and all that stuff. Most of
Mm-hmm.
my
Yeah, we did
girlfriends,
that.
they're all doing
Yeah.
that. He was actually
Yeah.
homeschooled too.
Oh, that's so neat. Second gen.
He turned out pretty good. All right. If you're curious about more biohacking insights, I do actually have my favorite biohacking picks on my favorites page at rachelvarga.ca. So you can see like red light therapy. I don't have a favorite PEMF machine. Maybe that will be another thing. But saunaing for detox is really important. The skin is one of the best ways we can actually detox. Fastest, most effective, and all of that. What are you doing for your mind? I know you have your business, but what do you do like for fun? Do you do any crafts, any music?
I think for my mind, see if you were gonna maybe talk about meditation or something. And I definitely, I have much contemplation time. Like, so and I feel like that's where a lot of my business happens, or my formulating, which, so I don't know. I don't think I'm good to have a hobby until I'm like 80 or 90 right now. Because whatever I do as a hobby just becomes like a business. So I have to kind of like chill because otherwise it will just become something. And I'm busy enough right now. But I do, for my mind, I find like what I like is, just time to think, time to look at the lake, time to meditate. I love being up super early, as dawn is coming and I'm hearing the birds chirp and the sunrise, and then just really having like contemplative time that's sort of in between a focused meditation and thinking. And I feel like that is actually really essential because that's where everything kind of gets sorted. And I feel like, I don't really need to knit or paint because I feel like I am constantly sort of doing that in my mind, like weaving the fabric of our lives.
That's really cool. So you get a lot out of your creativity in your business, and I think that's lovely. Some of the things that I do to support my mind, I play guitar. I love being
Beautiful.
out in nature, hiking, 4x4, exploring new trails, having that childlike quality and
Yeah.
exploring. I get my best creative hits out of that. It's very grounding. So it sounds like your mind sort of wellness comes from your routines, which is incredible when
Mm-hmm.
we can
Yeah,
create
and
the
for
lifestyle we
sure.
love.
Yeah, I love, we have a lot of trails on our land, and for sure, like walking, just walking the trails. We have a little electric ATV that I certainly like driving around. And I loved, obviously, being in the garden, and I love taking photos of our flowers that come up in the wildflowers. And that's, a beautiful part of taking a walk.
Spring is one of my favorite times to be in nature. I was actually up on the Juanifica Trail. It's
Mm,
quite rugged there. You can really get hurt. There's lots of bears and cougars around, but it's also where
wow,
nobody else is because it's so difficult to get to. I'll take you there when you come visit me,
that
100%.
sounds ideal.
I'm just in awe when everything starts to blossom. And for
Mm,
me, I get that like little like boost of like life force and vitality when I see things around me blossoming. And I just love the
yes.
feeling of spring.
Well, it's really cool that I learned recently too, because obviously we want, talking about being in the sun and harvesting all that beautiful information from the wavelengths of creation and the invisible light rays, the visible light rays. And I didn't realize that infrared is also coming off all things green and all life forms. So like, so this isn't necessarily about like being in the sun and sunbathing, but being in the sun to get the infrared, to get that red, that first part of the ray. If we think about the full color of the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, the violet being the one, the UV rays that will create melanin and create a tan, but that base note, so to speak, of the red is really key. And I didn't realize that it was like you can just absorb it from, being in the woods, being in the garden. You don't necessarily have to be in the sun. You can have a hat on, but you don't want to have glasses on because it's very important to receive that information. There are special receptors in our eyes that are different than the ones for vision. And that is giving information to our cells. And what I didn't know, which I find really super interesting, is we all know about the nighttime production of melatonin that is secreted from the pineal gland and then secreted in our bloodstream. But that's only about 5% of the melatonin story. And, obviously we used to be outdoors a lot more. So when we're outdoors, we're able to get the infrared. And what I didn't know is that through that infrared, so you can get that from the sun, or you could get that from a red light bed or red light panel, is there is a cellular daytime production of melatonin. And it doesn't circulate in the blood. And what it's there for is for the mitochondria. It is actually more powerful antioxidant than glutathione. And it acts like a coolant for the process of the mitochondria converting energy to ATP, which even if you're healthy, there's going to be oxidative stress and reactive oxygen species from that conversion. And the melatonin, the cellular production of it, acts like that a coolant fluid on the oxidative stress. So it's also like, wow, how many of us have been deprived of that regenerative nutrient from light in our cells for the mitochondria. So that kind of blew me away. And that, again, you can do that with just being outside, being near the trees, being in your garden, or having exposure to red light.
I cannot help but think we are in a way being programmed to live in a way that is unnatural to maintaining our highest purity of body, mind, spirit, and energy. So we really kind of have to go back to how we once used to live. Instead of chilling with Netflix, have a fire outside, cook your food over the fire. I take my guitar to the beach all the time. And yeah, I want to have a private time in the woods, but then at the beach, and then people start sitting next to me and it's okay. Clearly you like my vibes. That's cool. I love what you said about melatonin. And actually, one of my doctors recently prescribed melatonin for me for immune support. And the crazy thing, when I do all these different things to support this aspect of my body, my skin ends up being better. And I love the idea of not being afraid of the sun because the sun is like one of our most unadulterated life force sources. But when we have more antioxidants, we're living a less oxidative, stressful lifestyle, not just like the high beta stress with our businesses and the woes of the world, which turn the news off, by the way, in case you forgot that memo. Um, but we do need to support the various body, mind, spirit, energy aspects, and using non-toxic products is really important. So what do you do for like your spiritual wellness? I know you said meditation, but do you have a specific type of spiritual practice that you follow?
I don't. For me, I think is just connecting to nature is just, I feel like that's my connection to creation, and through the elements, that's where I feel it. Like, and literally like sunbathing, I'm just like, you call it sun worshiping if you want, but I'm just like, I'm connected. Hafiz has this line of a poem that's like, the sun has been my lover for millions of years. And it's just, to me, I don't know, that just to me is like, yes, it's like that connection to me is spirit. Seeing the sunrise, seeing it set is a spiritual practice.
Absolutely. Admiring the beauty around us is a spiritual practice in and of itself. Beauty isn't obtained, it is. Being in
Yeah.
that feeling and vibration of beauty and radiance is how you become beautiful.
Yeah, it's like not something that can really be applied, even though, I mean, that's like literally just how we're raised, right? It's like, well, because it's just the beauty industry, I think, with a beauty with a small b. And beauty is really a communion. And it's like an engagement with life. It's an engagement with yourself. It's an engagement with the elements. And I think in those moments when we're so engaged with life, it's like we can kind of forget ourselves. Kind of like when we're having an orgasm, we're looking at a sunset. And I think kind of when we have that full communion union, that really speaks to me about beauty. And I feel like that's what can fuel us rather than looking in the mirror, worrying about the wrinkles and like, picking zits. It's like not the pathway.
And not getting hyper focused on
Yeah.
things that we don't like about ourselves. It's
Yeah,
like
like
flip that
don't get a
script.
magnifying mirror,
No,
like
no,
don't.
no, 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 no. The
And
times
nobody's
20
looking
mirror,
at you
no.
with that, like nobody is looking at your face like you do if you're sort of analyzing it that deeply.
But the skin does give us very important insights
It
as to
does.
what's
Yeah, so we
going
don't want
on
to ignore that.
inside. Definitely not.
Yes.
Especially with you and I. I would say you and I, Nadine, we are of a particular skin type. And I would love for you to share with us your insights on skin typing, some of the manipulations and programs around skin types, and how you would better frame skin typing. And then I would like to add this layer as well. So, what is your take on the term skin type?
Well, I do think skin type and sort of how we've grown up with that is a lot of hype. And it was actually a term or like a whole marketing system that was created by Clinique in the late 60s. And I really feel that if there are imbalances with the skin, like hyperpigmentation, melasma, dandruff, psoriasis, eczema, acne, cystic acne, thrush, any and all those things, that isn't a skin type imbalance. It's not about oily in the T-zone or whatever, dry skin. It's actually a skin microbiome imbalance. And these are so it's giving you clues as to sort of like what's off in the microbiome. And that's what we need to pay attention to. And it's kind of interesting because, most of our modern skincare is really mutating the microbiome. And, even something like glycerin can create the cell, something through osmolarity, where the glycerin on the outside of the skin actually has the cell release its water. So even if that's glycerin that's being used as a lubricant, like a KY jelly, scientists found that what that's doing inside the vagina is actually creating cellular raisins. That's what the scientists called it, because the cells are shriveling up because they're losing their water. So it seems like an innocuous ingredient. And there are times when it is okay, but it's not something you get. Like if we're putting on our skin, we get that temporary plumping, so we feel like it's working, but it kind of can create long-term drought. So, or we're using like benzoyl peroxide to take care of acne, which is just throwing things off with the microbiome. So as gross as it kind of sounds, I actually suggest that we want to allow the bacteria to be our beautician, to balance our skin, because, with our overexfoliation, we're then when we're over exfoliating or doing chemical peels or over exfoliating with things that are harsh or plastic cleansing beads, that's really disrupting the skin's microbiome, and then it's bringing up cells, the younger cells, too early in their life cycle, so they're too vulnerable to kind of have that top position on the stratum corneum. And when we're doing things like that and making the top layer of our skin vulnerable, which is connected to our innate immune system, it's kind of like leaving the door open when you're going on vacation. We're leaving things too vulnerable. And the bacteria on our skin are also needing some forms of sebum and things because that's like what they're eating, which again sounds so gross. But there's an ecosystem on our face, well, on our whole, skin microbiome, which is all of our body, that we don't want to mess with, and we don't want to be using chemical messengers to be, messing up that ecosystem that is literally our skin.
Yeah, so there's a few things I'd love to unpack here. I love that you mentioned lube because I was actually just thinking of doing an episode on
Oh,
just how darn toxic lubes are.
oh,
If
it's
you want
insane.
a recommendation, I have a fabulous one. It's actually a locally made product. Again, another female entrepreneur. Send me an email, info@rachelvarga.ca, and I'll get you hooked up. But when you're talking about mutations in the skin with products, when I do consultations with clients, I actually go through the products they're using and the ingredients. And we all know this brand. It's like this huge, big Cosmos store that has got black and white branding. Y'all know the one I talk to. You walk in and you're just like, whew, overcome with toxic fragrances, right? Phthalates and fragrances, which I know
Mm.
you know all about. I don't go into those stores at all. In fact, I had to get some foam made for something I'm doing in my home. And I actually started coughing 20 minutes later after
Mm.
exposure. So be very careful with some of the stores you're going into in the VOC exposure. But an ingredient I saw in a product, this is why I love one-on-one care, so that I get exposure to things that people are buying. And DNA was a full-on ingredient in a skincare product being marketed to young ladies.
Wow.
Where's the DNA from? Is it animal? Is it plant? What is that?
That's really
Right?
vague. Yeah.
Very vague and very sketchy. So that's why I think Big Cosmo and Big Pharma are just as bad. In fact, they're in bed together. A lot of these companies are owned by one another. So they are
Yeah.
connected.
Oh, yeah. Like Johnson and Johnson.
Yeah, well, we're not going to
There's
get
something
like
else. We don't have
brand
to get, sorry.
specifics here, but because that's not kind of my style. I don't like to
Yeah.
like bash brands and stuff
No.
like that. But I know you know what I mean. The other thing, yes, plastic exfoliating beads. This is really important, and I'm very particular. The products I recommend for my clients to not have plastic beads. They're in a lot of really toxic beauty products. The other thing is, I like to teach my clients to get really in tune with their skin and allow the skin to re-epithelialize, right? A lot of
Mm-hmm.
practitioners, yeah, I'll agree with you, are getting people to over exfoliate and do too much. Like, I actually can't even tolerate retinol very well, which is, a very potent form of vitamin A, and it's a potent antioxidant, but there is kind of a method to the madness with organizing these things. But yes, I actually teach in my skin camp programs and in my one-on-one sessions to allow the skin to re-epithelialize, to build back up. So it's really important. And then just a point of clarity here, we want to make sure that we understand the greenwashing. You'll love this, with chemical free and all natural. Those actually mean nothing in the chemistry world. They're actually just marketing terms. A
Mm-hmm.
petroleum will be considered all natural because it's still from the earth. So just so you guys can become smarter consumers. So when I think skin type, I actually think of what's called the Fitzpatrick skin type, where we actually have this scale of different skin types that have different varying amounts of melanin. And depending on how much melanin someone has in a particular skin type, they will have either higher or lower propensity to developing skin cancers. The kicker here is you can kind of hack that with making sure that you're using good, safe products. You're chock or blocking your body full of antioxidants. So that, yes, you can be outside and get that sunscreen. But if you are my skin type, that if I'm not on the right stuff, I can go outside and get pink in like 15, 20 minutes. But the crazy thing is when you live a healthier lifestyle, your body will innately become better able to manage that inflammation that can, yes, be triggered by the sun. So there are some really high-tech ways to hack that, but I'll agree that the skin type of like dry, oily, rosacea, redness, acne prone totally was just kind of made up. And you're right. I've heard you talk about this before. We have to look at these things that our skin is telling us because they're essentially giving us insights as to imbalances on the inside. Like rosacea or acne isn't considered a skin type. It's the Fitzpatrick skin type, which is the measurement of melanin. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, now we know too, rosacea is really caused by a mite. So it's really a signal of the microbiome being off. And I find like once people get off the chemical products, it actually so simply goes away. We recommend a lot like washing and cleansing with oil, which is, before soap, that's how people were cleansing their skin in many different cultures, sort of transhistorically, cross-culturally, whether it's Turkish bath with the Striegel, the Berber women of Morocco, or ancient or traditional Chinese beauty care where they're using gua sha, which has become more popular these days. And it's about, oiling up the skin and then scraping, but I say that word very gently. It's more like, which you can also even do with a cloth. And when people, get off their 12-step program of face cleaning with chemicals, the skin's able to reset. And I love using jojoba because it's this oil that really is the most similar to our sebum. It's super high in natural ceramides, and it's actually a liquid wax. So if it's stored properly, it won't go rancid for like 100 years, which is phenomenal because we never want to put rancid oils on our body like almond oil, grapeseed, peach kernel. Those are all going to be rancid by the time you get them, and they may not even be like 100% pure. But often you'll see that in green beauty because those are cheaper oils to use. But you can just tell there's something rancid in there.
And yeah, the whole rancid oil thing. Yeah. I'm actually a huge fan of coconut surfactant for cleansing. That's one of my favorites. So that's something I like to recommend for my clients too, because I work with a lot of clients that have sensitive skin and they've been told, and it can actually be really damaging when they have someone say, you have rosacea, when really it could be the oxidative stress that's on the inside and using toxic products that are contributing to that. So I love that we are both aware of that. I wanted to ask you some of your questions on your thoughts on oral health. I know that you have a lot of insight into this. So share with us some of your key insights on how we can care for our oral health in a healthier way. And then I think we will be wrapping up our episode. I'll for sure have you back on the show. But how can we care for our mouth in a healthier way?
Yeah, well, it's, a same situation. We have another microbiome in there. It's actually even more active. And then funnily enough, it's actually like a mouth with bustling bacteria that are going to keep the dentist away and then keep the pathogenic bacteria in check. So even if you ditched what you had and like just worked with baking soda for the rest of your life, you would be far better off. I have created like various dental serums and I have like a whole book on dentistry. So there's like, much deeper we can do that. But I always like to give people just like the simplest thing that, almost could any budget can pretty much get baking soda. So just know that it'll be far less abrasive. It's alkalizing. It's so healing for the mouth to just use baking soda and not use a commercial paste. They can have triclosan or saccharin or sodium lauryl sulfate, which literally creates bleeding and receding gums, or your commercial, mouthwashes that are all filled in the, in the drugstore shelves. That my stat's about 10 years old, so it's probably increased, but about 10 years ago, the stat was that mouthwashes of that kind with the synthetic alcohols create over 36,000 cases of oral cancer in North America a year. So it's just foolish, right, that we're using that. And then what's really neat is the dental serums that I created actually in my 20s because I was seeing a holistic dentist. And the hygienist who was super cool was like, oh, you've got the beginning of a cavity. Like, go home and make something and then come back in 6 months. And I didn't even know that you could like cease a cavity or that it could possibly reverse at that stage. And so I did. I went home and worked with oils that now became the Happy Gumdrops. And it was effective, and it was so cool to see that x-ray. And then what I found out later, because now we've had people studying the microbiome, is that these beautiful botanicals that I use in the oral care products, but really because we've been using them for thousands of years, like tea tree or neem, frankincense, cloves, cinnamon, rose, those beautiful extracts. Now we know why people have been using them for thousands of years, because we can now study with the microbiome that these oils, the essential oil extracts of these plants, act as something called quorum sensing inhibitors, QSI for short. And they're able to clean up the pathogenic activity, bust through biofilms, yet work with the beneficial bacteria and keep that intact. So it's like, what better medicine could there be for bringing our mouths back into balance?
Yeah, and I'd love to support you and the work that you're doing. And if any of you are thinking about getting some clean oral products, I've been on the hunt for some things. I've actually had some clients have some issues with some of the teeth whitening lights and
Oh,
have
yeah.
actually having them trigger melasma. That was really interesting. I did a
Mm-hmm.
consult for one of my clients, and she's like, "Yeah, I've been using this like teeth whitening light, and then all of a sudden my melasma to my upper lip got worse." And then I said, "Okay, maybe just take that out for a little bit." And she emailed me back yesterday and she said, "Yeah, it's actually my melasma. Her melasma is improving after
That's
reducing."
amazing.
Very
I
interesting.
have this little group of products that I created called the doodabs. So we've got Jewel Dab, Bee Doodab, Doodab, Zippity Doodab.
Cute.
And they're for various things, for spot treatments, Zippity Doodabs for acne and zits. But there's the Jewel Dab and the Doodab are amazing for melasma. We have really amazing success rates from fading to 100% clearing up. And so I feel that that's really exciting for people.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm definitely looking forward to getting my hands on some of your oral
Oh, we're
health type
sending.
of products. Pumped about that. And if you'd like to learn more about Living Libations, you can go ahead and use promo code VARGA and save on your next order using the link also in this episode show notes below. And I'm always happy to support fellow female Canadian entrepreneurs that are doing some other good things behind the scenes as well. And it's just been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today, Nadine. And
It's
I
been
look
so
forward to
lovely.
connecting with you in the flesh and, getting our creative juices going. I mentioned before recording with Nadine I'm really interested in the cell signaling component because, as you guys know, I'm an active researcher on essential oils and the skin and transdermal messaging, because I am a formulator as well, Gen Chem, Organichem, Biochem background. And I'm not doing the white label route like you haven't done the white label route. Most influencers and practitioners these days are doing white label skincare and supplements, which talked about here on the show. But people like Nadine and I, we create it from the ground up and do the best we can to make cleaner products to support those who choose to work with us and support us in the best way possible. So thank you so much, Nadine, for being on the show. Everybody pick up a copy of Nadine's book, Renegade Beauty. And also, if you haven't checked out my ebook, Unlocking Your Vitality, I'm always studying people like you, Nadine, who are living radiantly body, mind, spirit, energy practices and sharing these little nuggets of insights to help others live their best, brightest, radiant lives, not just now, but for many more years to come, and to have more supportive and positive interactions with people, places, and things. Lead by example. Be that person that enters the room where people are like, "Whoa, what magic
I'll have
sauce
what
are
she's
they
having.
dipping in?"
Yeah.
Well, it was a pleasure having you on the show, Nadine, and I can't wait to connect with you further.
So lovely to be with you today. Thank you.